Hello, this is Ben Television News Roundup, a compilation of major stories in the week ending. I'm Tunde Alabi. Thank you for being part of the program today. The acting Labour leader, Arrett Hamann, at the Prime Minister's question time, has informed the Prime Minister, David Cameron, that the government is sending confusing messages to the people on a stand on the proposed British Bill of Rights.
The Prime Minister celebrated the Magna Carta, which set out that those who govern must be constrained in their exercise of power to protect those they govern. Our Human Rights Act is the very embodiment of those values. If he accepts that in a democracy there needs to be an effective check on executive power, even though at times it can be uncomfortable for government, will he abandon his plans to water down the Human Rights Act?
Well, first of all, can I very much agree with the Right Honourable Lady with what she said about 7/7, about the 10-year anniversary, about the bravery and the dignity of those families that lost their loved ones. And she, like I, took part in the commemorations yesterday that I thought were fitting and a permanent reminder to the threat we face and the work we must do to face down the evil of these terrorists and their narrative of extremism. The point she makes about the Magna Carta, I would say, demonstrates that there were human rights before the Human Rights Act. And the point I would make is our proposed reform is to have a British Bill of Rights so that more of these judgments are made by British judges in British courts. Harriet Harman.
But it's very important that we're unhesitating in our compliance with international standards on this. Otherwise, it gives a strong signal to other countries that we want to undermine those standards. But there have been mixed messages from the government. Last week, senior government sources briefed the newspapers that the Prime Minister's view was that withdrawal from the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, is not going to happen. But the Home Secretary, the Justice Secretary and the Leader of the House have indicated that they want to leave. So can the Prime Minister make it absolutely clear that Britain will be staying in the European Convention on Human Rights?
Well, I think there, as I've said to the Honourable Right Honourable Lady before, there's a danger of believing everything you read in the newspapers. Our intention is very clear: to pass a British Bill of Rights, which we believe is compatible with our membership of the Council of Europe. But as I've said at this dispatch box before, no one should be in any doubt when it comes to issues like prisoner voting and things like that. I am clear these issues should be decided in this House of Commons. And I think it's vital. So let's pass a British Bill of Rights. Let's give more rights to these things to be decided in British courts. And let's recognise we had human rights in this country long before Labour's Human Rights Act.
Also, the Labour Party has criticised the government over the new budget. Speaking at the Prime Minister's question time this week, the Labour acting leader, Arrett Hamann, said that millions of working families will be left worse off as a result of the new budget. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, has said the budget is being set to move people out of poverty and cut Britain's debt.
Turning to the budget, we're all concerned to see today's rise in overall unemployment, but for those in work, the Chancellor said that his changes on pay and tax credits will make working families better off, but they won't. The Institute for Fiscal Studies have now made it absolutely clear that the idea that a higher minimum wage will compensate for the loss of tax credits is arithmetically impossible. So will he now admit that as a direct result of his cuts to tax credits, millions of working families on low incomes will be worse off?
Well, first of all, let me comment on the unemployment figures. And she's right, there are mixed messages in these figures. It's disappointing that the claimant count has gone up, having fallen for so many months in a row and still being at the lowest level since 1975. But long-term unemployment is down, youth unemployment is down, the rate of employment for women is at a new record high. And interestingly, when you look across the last year, you can actually see that all of the rise in employment in the last year has been people working full-time. And interestingly, in light of the debates we had in the last Parliament, wages are up by 3.2% in these figures. compared obviously with the inflation figures yesterday that were zero. Now, in terms of the budget, I remember her asking me from that dispatch box and making the point that reforming welfare wouldn't work unless we increased minimum wages by a quarter. Well, I can tell her we're not going to. We're increasing them by a third through the national living wage.
To accept the fact, which has been absolutely clearly established by the Institute for Fiscal Studies, that the minimum wage increase will not compensate for his cuts in tax credits. And that takes me to another claim the Prime Minister made about the budget. He said that he would protect the most vulnerable. Well, you're obviously vulnerable if you have a condition like Parkinson's or you're being treated for cancer. The changes in the budget mean that the support people like that will be cut from £100 a week to £70. We agree that the deficit needs to come down. But what kind of government is it that thinks the way to do that is to hit people who, through no fault of their own, are suffering from life-limiting illnesses? That's what his budget is doing.
Prime Minister. Well, first of all, let's deal with the effects of this budget, and let me give her the figures. A family with 2 children, where both parents work full-time on the minimum wage, they will be better off by 2020 by a full £5,500. I don't think the party opposite has fully grasped the importance of this national living wage. They fought an election on it being £8 by the next election. It's going to be over £9 by the next election because of the action of this government. Now, she wants to ask questions about welfare, and I welcome what she said. She said this week, we won't oppose the welfare bill, we won't oppose the housing benefit cap. She said we won't oppose restricting benefits and tax credits for people with 3 or more children. I welcome that. What a pity that the rest of her party doesn't agree with her. Now, she asked specifically about employment and support allowance, and I think this is really important we get this right. There are 2 groups of people on employment and support allowance. There's the support group who will continue to get extra money, more than on job seekers allowance, and will continue to get that for as long as they need it. In terms of future claimants in the work-related activity group, existing claimants keep the existing amount of money, but for new claimants, I think it's right that they should get the same amount as job seekers allowance, and then get all the help that we give to job seekers to help them into work. People ask why. I'll tell you why. We want to get people into work. We want to give people a chance. We want to give people a life. That's what this budget was all about.
He talks about new claimants, but I don't think he really understands the reality of the situation, because a lot of these people are in and out of work because they want to work, but they can only work intermittently. And every time they go back into work, when they come out of work, they'll be treated as a new claimant. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, I don't need to be patronised by the Prime Minister about not understanding the minimum wage. We introduced it. And the fact of the matter is that the IFS says that 3 million families will be at least £1,000 a week worse off. Now, Mark, a year. The Minister for Skills was on the radio this morning talking about party funding, saying the government's curbs on trade unions' donations were not an attack on working people and the Labour Party. But it doesn't look that way. There's an issue about big money in politics, but it's got to be done fairly. So will the Prime Minister commit that he will not go ahead with these changes unless it's on a cross-party basis? And will he include the issue of individual donation caps? It's not acceptable for him to be curbing funds from hard-working people to the Labour Party while turning a blind eye to donations from hedge funds to the Tories.
Well, finally, Mr. Speaker, we see where all these questions were going. You know, the Labour Party can go round and round and round, but it always comes back to the trade unions who call the tune. Now, let me answer all the questions. Let me answer all the questions that she asked. First of all, on the national living wage, if the Labour Party is so keen on it, why did they vote against it in the budget last night? Second of all, on employment and support allowance, the number of people coming off job seekers allowance is more than 7 times the number of people who've come off incapacity benefits since 2010. We want to help to get these people back to work. Now she asks about the issue of trade union funding for the Labour Party. I think there's a very simple principle here. If you want to give money to a party, it should be an act of free will, not something that is taken out of your pay packet without you being told about it properly. If this wasn't happening in the trade unions, the Labour Party would be saying this was appalling mis-selling. They would say it was time for consumer protection. Why is there such a blind spot, even with the Honourable Lady, when it comes to the trade union paymasters?
Now to America. In a new video released by the White House in the West Wing week, the programs of the U.S. President Barack Obama has been highlighted as U.S. celebrated his 239th birthday.
Welcome to West Wing Week.
Welcome to the West Wing Week, your guide to everything that's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and at the Women's World Cup. This week, the President celebrated the 239th birthday of the United States of America, chatted with some of those World Cup champions, met with his national security team to discuss our anti-ISIL strategy, and hosted an historic Oval Office visit. That's July 3rd to July 9th, or Bask in the Glory.
You guys deserve it. You guys worked really hard, and you made us all really proud.
On Saturday, the 4th of July, the President invited military heroes and their families to celebrate Independence Day on the South Lawn of the White House.
So we just want to wish you the happiest 4th of July and remind ourselves that freedom is not free. It's paid by all the folks who are here today and all the folks who are around the world.
On Sunday, the Vice President and Dr. Biden led a U.S. delegation to the 2015 Women's World Cup final. On Monday, the President called Team USA to congratulate the champions for bringing home the World Cup championship and to ask for some advice.
Carly, what have you been eating?
Mr. President?
I want to do what you're doing.
Later, the President spoke at the Pentagon about his comprehensive strategy to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL.
Across more than 2 centuries, we faced much bigger, much more formidable challenges than this. Civil war, the Great Depression, fascism, communism, terrible natural disasters, 9/11. And every time, every generation, our nation has risen to the moment. We don't simply endure, we emerge stronger than before, and that will be the case here.
On Tuesday, the President made history. He invited the General Secretary of Vietnam to the White House for the first time since our country's normalized relations 20 years ago. In the afternoon, the President met with healthcare experts who are revolutionizing how we improve health and treat disease as part of the Precision Medicine Initiative. Meanwhile, the President's plan to increase access to solar technology, specifically in low and moderate income communities, was put into action. On Thursday, the White House hosted the inaugural Tribal Youth Gathering, bringing together more than 875 Native youth representing 230 tribes from 42 different states.
Now to Africa, Nigeria. Nigerians have said President Buhari's performance will be judged on changes in major sectors such as power, economy, security, and corruption. The editor of a UK-based newspaper, Nigerian Watch, Ayo Akinfe, disclosed this during an interactive discussion on Ben TV's current affairs program, News Punch. Mr. Akinfe said that the last government failed Nigerians in these critical sectors, and Nigerians took the decision to vote them out of power.
Which Goodluck Jonathan was judged, and the judgment failed. Unemployment, security, power supply, and corruption. Those are the key 4 issues for Nigerians. And I will always use those as a barometer. You know, and in 4 years' time, when it comes to assessing how well the Buhari government has done, we have to look at these 4 areas to see if it has delivered. And so far, you know, no government has delivered on those 4. What's happened since May 29th when Buhari was sworn in? Boko Haram have killed over 500 people. That issue hasn't been addressed. They've appointed some new security chiefs now. Hopefully, they might get on top of the issue. In terms of corruption, the EFCC has been arraigning a lot of people lately. Let's hope that will go on. In terms of employment, something like 80% of Nigerian graduates are unemployed. We need to see action on that very quickly, within a year. And then on the issue of power, You don't need me to go over that. Everybody in Nigeria has a generator. We need to see a large, some large hydroelectric or gas-fired power plant that can generate something like, 10,000 megawatts to at least begin to address that issue.
And with that story on Nigeria, we conclude the news roundup for this week. Thank you for being there. My name is Tunde Alabi. Do have a very good week.
Are you planning a trip to Lagos anytime soon? Then make it a date with us at Dreamland Luxury Suites. Dreamland Luxury Suites is an icon in the city of Lagos, offering luxury at its most resplendent. Our executive rooms are fitted with classic Italian sofa seats, providing a truly comfortable stay away from home. We are located just 10 minutes away from the international airport in Lagos. Our facility is a perfect match to accommodate visitors. Enjoy the best of African and continental dishes. Experience fullness of hospitality like never before in an atmosphere of imperial splendor at affordable rate. Dreamland Luxury Suites. Luxury with comfort and privacy is our promise.
I say and do